Hello everyone, welcome to Field Notes, an exploration of functional medicine. I'm Rob Downey, a family practice MD and Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner. I'm coming to you from Seaworthy Functional Medicine in Homer, Alaska. Seaworthy exists to help people overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. Today, we are fortunate enough to be joined by Marc David, an expert in the psychology of eating and a psychologist by training who's now spent decades helping people learn a positive dimension of what I would think of as food friendships. We'll see if he agrees with that over the course of the interview. Hello, Marc. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Dr. Rob. So glad to be here. Really appreciate it.
So I forgot to ask you as we were getting ready today, where in the world are you today? Zoom always makes that a little bit of a hanging question mark, I suppose.
Right. I am in the wonderful Boulder, Colorado. I've been living here for 18 years and still love it.
I mentioned to you before we started, my wife's very familiar with your work over many years, and she flagged it that Hawaii is a place that you love, and I worried that we might have you might have ended up with a slot with us that was like 2 a.m. your time. So I'm glad that didn't happen.
Amen.
It's a reasonable time of the day for you. So your work, like many thought leaders, includes multiple facets of how people can land on who you are and what you do. You've got books, you've got a website, you've got resources. So on the front end of the interview, I want to thank our audience for taking the time and just have them know that however they like to learn or engage, they can find out about you. And as I've been getting up to speed on your work, what just made me so excited for today is that it's about a positive relationship with food. It's also about these these ideas that there are psychological dimensions to what we eat, how we eat, why we eat, that are critically important for food to move us forward. And some of them are intuitive, some of them aren't, but if one lacks a full appreciation of this, there's just not enough power in the equation to move forward and get into that space of joy with food. Is that accurate?
I think it's very well put. Yes. I feel that in the nutrition universe, and understandably so, the main conversation going back and forth with any nutrition expert for decades has been really, what should we eat? And that's a great question. What should we be putting into our bodies? I love that about nutrition, because if you've ever paid attention to it, you start to learn really quickly that, the food I eat makes an impact upon me. And what I started noticing at some point in my own career, Rob, was that really knowledge about what to eat could only take us so far in the nutritional equation, meaning I noticed there was a missing piece, which was who we are as eaters.
Mm-hmm.
And who we are as eaters can really get down to what's happening in our physiology, what's happening in our metabolism, how we're digesting and assimilating and, pulverizing a meal. It's really the simplest connection. Really, we're talking about the mind-body connection here, is our relationship with stress and relaxation as it relates to food. And as it turns out, and this is the most basic science, that the body is optimally designed to digest, assimilate, and calorie burn a meal, and to naturally regulate our appetite when we're in a relaxation response, parasympathetic nervous system dominance. That's how the game works. That's how we're wired. Opposite to that, when you and I are in a full-blown stress response, if the Alaskan bear is chasing you, your heart rate is up, your blood pressure is up, blood is going away from your digestive organs. In a full-blown stress response, the digestive system completely shuts down. So the bottom line is we could be eating the healthiest meal in the universe on paper. But if I'm not under the optimal state of digestion and assimilation and calorie burning and natural appetite regulation, which is relaxation, which is the physiologic relaxation response, then I'm not getting the full value from that meal. I'm literally excreting nutrition. I'm literally malabsorbing nutrients. So to me, that's a stunning piece of information that should be headline news in any nutrition
Absolutely.
conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you for starting there. I think that it's a point where the lights come on for my patients and now this audience of folks that are, as I'm getting to be part of the conversation, for me, it's so inspiring every week because Alaska's obviously a little isolated. When I get to talk with somebody like you, I get to spend time with my tribe every week, right? So not only do I get this sense of the audience benefiting, but it always lights me up for a good long while. And when I talk with my patients about that, hey, if the software isn't running to run digestion, again, you can be throwing this awesome fuel in there, but you're not in rest and digest mode.
Yes. And what's fascinating is, when people hear the term stress, we all go to an interesting place. We often go to, oh, I need to do stress reduction, which usually sounds like meditation for people. And, I look at stress essentially as generally two kinds for most humans. The one kind of stress is the stress that we naturally have as human beings, just being alive on planet Earth. There's going to be challenges every day, every week. There's going to be business issues. There's going to be aging parents and kids having problems in school. So those are all real, honest to goodness, natural life stressors that we have to learn how to navigate. There's this other kind of stress that's self-created, that's sort of optional. And what I've noticed is a lot of the self-created stressors for people, as it relates to food, can look like the conversation that's going on in our heads. I'm too fat. I'm not good enough. If I don't lose weight, I won't be lovable and I'll never be happy. This body is no good. I hate my body. Anytime we're making the body the enemy, the mind is sensing enemy. Anytime the brain senses enemy, we're going to go into some version of a stress response, some degree of a stress response. Stress is any real or imagined threat and the body's response to it. That's a very simple, classic scientific definition. So scientists recognized a long time ago that you can be chased by somebody and go into a stress response, or you can think about the guy that chased you 10 years ago and go into a very similar stress response. So how I'm living in my internal world helps create my physiology. Rob, I think also at the same time, another powerful self-created stressor, a lot of people have the sort of hidden belief that food is the enemy. And the reason why I think a human being walks around with that idea is because if somebody's trying to lose weight, if you've been told since you've been a kid, you're not good enough, you're chubby, you're fat, you're this, you're that, you got to lose weight. And there's people, I still meet people these days who've been dieting for 50, 60, 70 years. I mean, it's stunning. So we then start to believe, well, food makes me fat, therefore food is the enemy. Therefore, every time I'm sitting down with a meal, I'm in some version of a stress response. I'm producing stress chemistry. I'm producing cortisol and insulin. And those hormones, if you secrete them enough, for the average human, they're going to signal the body to store fat and store weight and not build muscle, which is the opposite of what everybody wants. Plus, it's going to deregulate your appetite. And I've noticed about 85% of people, when they're stressed, they're going to reach for more food. Small number of people, when they're stressed, they eat less. So, part of the equation is of course, what should I eat? And again, the other half is, well, okay, how do I best come to the table so that I'm fully metabolizing my meal, so that I'm eating under the ideal state that I'm designed to eat under.
Hmm. Well, I love what you're saying, and it fits very much with what I would tend to think of as sort of the core training of the Institute for Functional Medicine. I flashed on a lot of things while you were talking, but perhaps the most important one to share with our audience is this idea that came from a California animal physiologist, this idea that zebras don't get ulcers.
Mhm.
And his premise for a book of the same title, which we can make sure and add to the show notes for the attribution, is that zebras are on the Serengeti at any moment. They're not like other critters. They don't have a terribly good place to hide. The whole thing's flat. and, and so they have to reproduce and eat and sleep and rest with the constant presence of lions and other big cats and hyenas. And so there's this idea in the book that the presence of threat isn't synonymous with living a peaceful and productive life. So when it's actually time to run away from the lion, go ahead. And when the lion's back in the grass, reproduce, make babies, enjoy the water. I think that it's for people who feel that this is a threatening world. How do I get into a state of ease in relationship to sitting down to a meal? There's something about this idea that zebras don't get ulcers that's got a key component.
Yes. Part of it is that many animals in nature, they don't hold on to a stress response.
Hmm.
So in that book, I believe it's Robert Sapolsky.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's when an animal is under stress, the lion's chasing them, and they get away. What often happens is that lion, that creature is carrying a lot of stress in their system, and animals have a way of shaking it off. Sometimes they'll literally fall down and collapse and shake it off.
Hmm.
It looks
Hmm.
like they just got the shivers.
Mm.
And what's happening is they're moving that energy out of their body, and all
Hmm.
of a sudden they're returning to a relaxation response. So
Hmm.
their system sort of does it automatically. And I think we humans are tasked with, how do we train ourselves? What practices can I do that help train me to see the world as a more positive place, see
Hmm.
myself in it as a more positive person?
Hmm.
Uh, if I'm, so many people are dealing with overeating or binge eating or emotional eating, or they're dealing with, I want to lose weight. But if I'm dealing with that from the place called, I'm no good, I'm not enough, I have a problem. There's something wrong with me. I'm
Hmm.
no good. I don't have enough willpower.
Hmm.
Every one of those thoughts is going to put us into some degree of anxiety or fear or stress, i.e., stress response. So part of it is learning how to reframe
Hmm.
some of the challenges that we're facing and look at it from not only a positive, more positive frame, but what I believe is a more accurate frame. As an
Hmm.
example, a typical person who finds themselves binge eating is going to be complaining, I can't control myself. I have a willpower problem. Something's wrong with me. Whereas from an eating psychology standpoint, from a positive eating psychology standpoint, every eating challenge that a human being faces is here to help us grow.
Hmm.
So that's its purpose. It's here to help us grow, and it has information for us. It has a message for us, or messages that will put us on that journey to growth. So when somebody comes to see me and they're saying, oh, I'm binge eating, I've got a willpower problem, something's wrong with me, I need to be fixed, woe is me. What I say to them is, something, every eating challenge that we face, such as binge eating, has a brilliant reason that's rooted somewhere in biology or psychology or both. We're
Hmm.
gonna we're gonna discover the brilliant reason why you binge eat, So you can
Mhm.
understand why it makes sense.
Mhm.
And then from there, people can relax, and then we can start to unwind it. So, as
Mhm.
an example, what might be and there's many different reasons why a human being would binge eat. One common reason, I'll take a typical person who's dieting. And what happens is a lot of people who diet, they think I got to go low fat or very low fat, or some people even go no fat. And at the same time, if I'm dieting, clearly my issue must be, according to what we've been taught, I'm eating too much. So if I
Mhm.
can, more exercise and less food equals weight loss. So people will limit their calories. And if they're artificially limiting their calories, i.e., they're not eating enough, so they'll skip breakfast, they'll eat a tiny lunch, there won't be any fat in their diet. It is predictable that that person's going to be binge eating at about 4 p.m.
Mhm.
Why? Because brain is scanning the body. It's scanning my nutritional profile and going, okay, what's going on here? You're lacking in caloric energy, you're lacking in essential fatty acids, and the brain isn't smart enough to say, hey, you know something? You need to eat more food. You need to have more of this important macronutrient, otherwise you're not going to be able to survive. Brain is going to simply scream at us, hungry.
Mhm.
And at some
Mhm.
point, that hunger will drive us to binge, because our genetics is really demanding that we survive. That's all it's doing. So
Mhm.
actually, your body, if you're binge eating under those circumstances, thank goodness your body's brilliant. It's doing the right thing.
Mhm.
Even though you think you have a willpower problem and you think something's wrong with you, no, actually your body's working correctly. And if
Yeah.
you're going to lose weight, we're going to look at different ways to do that that are actually more doable and sustainable.
Right. These concepts are so beautiful, I would say, for so many important reasons. And one of the things that I think is a root cause for why what you're describing is liberating for people or transformational is because a fair number of people are so hard on themselves. When we encourage compassion,
Mhm.
then a lot of the first pushback is often, well, I'm not going to go easy on myself. But when we say to them instead, let's bring this into the light.
Mhm.
Let's simply bring the root cause into the light so you can ask for yourself, does this have a legitimate origin? Well, that's not letting oneself off the hook. It's simply understanding where something's coming from. And in the light of understanding, we navigate differently.
Bingo. It's literally taking the thing that we've made the enemy, my binge eating, my overeating, my emotional eating, my body fat, and embracing it, listening to it,
Mm-hmm.
decoding it.
Mm-hmm.
What's here for me to learn?
Mm-hmm.
And from that place, that's where healing and transformation begins to happen. That's where we're partnering with our clients or our patients, where we are empowering them to see, oh, you're on a learning and healing journey, and our relationship with food is just here to teach us. It's here to help us grow.
Mm-hmm.
Some people grow in other ways. Some people it's their learning and growing through their marriage, through being a parent, through dealing with drugs, through gambling, whatever the issues are. It's
Mm-hmm.
different for everybody, and for a lot of humans, it boils down to my relationship with food. That's where the action is for them.
Mm-hmm. So do you find that people need a lot of techniques to that to some degree they get hardwired into some of this sounds like kind of entrenched shame psychology or lack of self-esteem around misunderstandings that date back, and so is simply the education enough that this is a growth opportunity, or do people need really specific techniques to build new neuroanatomic connections and understandings? How far do they have to go to reset the software?
Great question. I think it's yes to all of the above.
Mm,
We need a new perspective, a new understanding. So often we need new information.
mm-hmm,
Oftentimes we need a
mm-hmm,
bigger picture that's more generous and more accurate. And then from there, people usually need practices.
Mm-hmm.
As an example, I mentioned before that I've noticed a lot of people are walking around with the sort of hidden under the current toxic nutritional belief called food is the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens in that case is I'm now in a stress response. I'm not digesting as well. I'm not assimilating as well. I might be locking in the very weight that I'm trying to lose. It's going to be harder to burn fat from that place of chronic stress response, chronic elevated insulin and cortisol, harder to build muscle. So, the first place I'm going to work with that person might be with that toxic nutritional belief food is the enemy. Now, here's the thing, a lot of people who have that belief are fast eaters.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we fast? We usually fast for two reasons. Either it's just a habit, it's just what we learned. That's how your parents ate at the dinner table and you picked it up. It's how your friends did it. It's just how your environment trained you. We're a fast food, universe these days. And fast food just doesn't mean how the food is prepared. It's also means how we eat it. We eat it fast.
Mm-hmm.
So fast eating is either habit or it's the belief that food is the enemy. And if I believe food is the enemy, anytime you encounter the enemy, you want it to be quick. You want it to be over with.
Mm.
So, gosh, I don't know what to eat. I shouldn't eat food. Food makes me fat. Food is the enemy. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm eating quickly. I'm not present to the food. I'm not encountering it. I don't know how it tastes. I don't even know how it feels in my body because I'm just rushing through this experience because it's a dangerous one,
Mm-hmm.
according to my hidden belief.
Mm-hmm.
So, in order to help somebody change their physiology, so fast eating by itself, right now, if you're totally relaxed, and I said to you, Rob, have a meal right now, but just eat it really fast. You'll go into a stress response. So fast eating is a stressor for the body.
Mm.
Same way if
Mm-hmm.
I poured cold water over your head, you're gonna go into a quick stress response. It's just a natural stressor.
Mm-hmm.
So for many people, they cannot transform overeating or binge eating or emotional eating until they learn how to slow down with their eating, i.e., relax with food,
Mm-hmm.
which means beginning to let go of food is the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
So the belief change or the belief awareness is, oh, I have this belief. Huh. Does that make sense? Is food really the enemy? Actually, food is my best friend. I'm a human
Mm-hmm.
being. I need food to survive. Oh, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, it's so hard to eat slow. I can't do it. I tried it once. And yes, you did try it once and it was hard. But, if you want to learn the piano, you want to learn tennis, you want to learn anything, you don't try it once. It's
Mm-hmm.
practice. So the
Mm-hmm.
practice of slow eating is really the practice of being present with yourself, present with food,
Mm-hmm.
experiencing taste and the pleasure of the meal, feeling
Mm-hmm.
nourished by it. So it's not a speed,
Mm-hmm.
it's a state of being where I'm welcoming this moment and enjoying the thing that I'm doing. Because if you actually get what your brain is asking for, brain is asking for taste, it's asking for pleasure, it's asking for aroma and satisfaction. It wants the visuals of the meal. When you get that, we're satisfied.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I want to share a couple of things that you made me think about in case it's of benefit to our audience. One is this principle from naturopathic medicine, which is a close cousin to functional medicine, this idea that the body knows the way.
Mhm.
And and then I think also about the mindfulness retreat that my wife and I go to in the summer here. It's sponsored by people who follow the mindfulness principles of Thich Nhat Hanh,
Mhm.
and there every day has mindful eating at lunch in silence, not as restricting social contact, but as a chance to solely attend to food and the feeling of the summer air on our face, right? And you're encouraged to chew each bite 30 times And then before ingesting the food, there's this thankfulness for the food, the plants, etc. And also there's a related practice that sort of anything that arises emotionally, and I think of this as a dimension of the self-acceptance that you described, uh, just let it arise and embrace it and let it go. Whether it's a old tape or old software running about negative perceptions of the self, or this perfectionism I saw you describe in one of your videos. Oh, now I'm going to make it. Now I'm going to be perfect. Now I'm going to have the perfect body. Whatever it is, just recognize it, see it arise, let it go. Recognize it, see it arise, let it go. I think that mindfulness and flow state can really help people get unstuck, because this perfectionism you described is also part of this freneticness and stress. And so there's just a lot of letting go. It's a reiterative theme apparently in success.
Yeah, there's a lot of good juicy nuggets in what you're just describing, being able to go on a retreat like that and literally have enough time to train the body in a different way, or to give the body a different experience. Honestly, that was my first breakthrough with understanding the stress response, and slow eating was actually in a 10-day meditation retreat. I was about 19 years old when I did it 100 years ago. Uh, and I
You don't
was
look 119, so clearly the principles are serving you very well.
right. But I remember feeling shocked because in this 10-day retreat, they encourage you to eat mindfully. And I realized by the third or fourth day that I'd never truly tasted food. I was always eating quickly. I was always multitasking when I was eating. I was always doing something. I was watching TV. I was going here. I was going there. I ate fast because that's what everybody else at the table did when I was growing up. And all of a sudden, I had a different experience. So part of what helps us change is when you actually practice something, even if it's difficult, and then you have a positive experience and you see, oh my goodness, this works. So people who claim that I'm an overeater or a binge eater, if you can have one day where you are able to slow down your eating, you'll notice that your appetite is naturally regulated that day and you didn't binge eat that day. Oh, you know, and the bells and whistles can start to go off.
Mm-hmm.
As it relates to perfectionism, which is its own fascinating creature, I consider perfectionism a virus. It's a viral belief. So it's not an actual thing, but it's something that if you're alive on planet Earth, it's extremely easy to catch.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever has to tell you you should be perfect. We somehow absorb it from the world. I think we're getting these messages through media, through movies, through books, through magazine articles, through so many of the images that are hurled at us of successful people, successful men. Here's how successful men look and act. Here's what acceptable women look like. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what the best women look like. So all of a sudden, we're creating a perfection image in our minds, and I need to be perfect. And everybody has their particular definition of what perfect is. As it relates to food and body, it's usually I need to have the perfect body and I need to have the perfect diet, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
This food perfectly, whether I'm perfectly vegan, perfectly raw food, or perfectly never overeat or binge eat. And always around the corner from perfectionism, you will find self-abuse just waiting there.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're beautifully imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
We do emotionally eat, we do overeat here and there. Our bodies are not perfect, and they might be perfect for a minute to our liking, but it's going to change at some point. And what happens is, as soon as it changes, we go into self-abuse. We eat even more. We stop taking care of ourselves, or
Mm-hmm.
we go into all kinds of self-punishing conversation. So for a lot of people, before they can transform any aspect of their relationship with food. And oftentimes before they can help heal whatever dis-ease condition they're facing, it's useful to look at their perfectionism, if it is indeed there, because that creates a stress response once again. You can find for just about every disease category, the two most common, factors across the board are nutrition and stress, diet and stress. It just is. And again, we have to look at the stressors that we create. Perfectionism is just a profound stressor. And so many people, what they're learning, and I especially find this for women, because women are vulnerable to the viral belief of perfectionism, is what I've found. They're extra vulnerable. And so it's easy to walk around as a woman in this world, as a young woman in this world, and feel I'm not okay who I am. I need to change this body and then I'll be lovable. And then they have their weight loss number. I need to lose X number of pounds and I have to get to that perfect place. And we never get there.
What I see in my practice is often the greatest success for patients that fit that archetype is that they, I guess I would describe it as irony, as they let go of the project to lose weight and do what my old friend in Montana would describe as radical acceptance of what is. Here I am now. I'm pleased with this now. I'm grateful to have a body. I'm grateful to be in the day, roof over my head, some warmth, friendship. Then that underlying software that you've been describing and articulating so clearly resets, the insulin and cortisol drop. Insulin quits being the secret fat storage hormone that's driving some of this, and the weight tends to come off as a part of letting go.
And people think, well, weight is going to come off when I exercise more and eat less food. And what's fascinating, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember when sort of the medical fasting programs began. It was at least a couple of decades ago that I started noticing that. And at the time, I started meeting a lot of people, and many of my clients would tell me that, yeah, I was in a medical fasting program. Like, why not go to a clinic, go to a hospital that has a fasting program, and it's a great moneymaker for them. And I would hear a very common story, and I forgive me, but I love this story. And the story would be, I was fasting for a week. I was eating virtually nothing, and I gained 2 pounds. Or I didn't lose any weight. And it is completely confounding to the scientific mind, and there's no explanation for it, other than if you really are willing to look at the science and understand that the human body is not a simple calorie burning input-output machine. So what goes into calorie burning is just far more than calories in, calories out. And a stress response for many human beings, a long-term locked-in stress response, can signal the body to store weight, store fat, not build muscle. We can literally hang on to body weight even though we're barely eating. And on the one hand, there's a scientific sensibility to that. One of the ways that a creature in nature will survive certain kinds of stressors. So there's a stressor called famine. There's a stressor called I'm shipwrecked on a desert island. All of a sudden, my food source is gone. So for creatures in nature, when a food source is gone, human beings, any animal, we're going to shift. When there's not enough food in the environment, the brain is smart enough to determine that, and we're going to slow down calorie burning metabolism. We're going to store fat vigorously as a beautiful survival strategy. Okay, there's no food in your environment. Let's slow down calorie burning capacity. Let's not build muscle because that takes a heck of a lot of nutritional energy,
Mm-hmm.
building blocks, too
Mm-hmm.
much. And let's store fat because that's going to help us survive.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happened? So when people are chronically dieting, we're often signaling the body, you're on a desert island, store fat, store weight, and don't build muscle. We're literally telling the body to do that. And the
Mm-hmm.
body is obliging because it wants to live.
Mm-hmm.
The other piece is when we feel threat. One of the ways to deal with threat, you can watch animals in nature. Oftentimes, an animal will just like, a bear's going to stand on its front legs, and it wants to make itself look bigger. For a dog, their hair stands up, make you look bigger. Bigger creatures tend to have the advantage in nature. Bigger you are, the better your chance in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I feel threatened as a young person, if I feel betrayed, if I've been personally, emotionally, physically, sexually abused, one of the strategies that our body is going to use is to get bigger. If my body's bigger, it's less of a target. If my body's bigger and I have been sexually compromised at a young age, then I become less of a sexual target. Somehow the brain knows that.
Mm-hmm.
So big, and this is not for everybody. This is for some people who have
Mm-hmm.
excess weight who can't lose it. That excess weight actually has a brilliant function. It's there to protect me.
Mm-hmm.
So before I could actually lose that weight, I have to begin to understand that I'm safe.
Mm-hmm. And do some of the people that work with you, Mark, do they then end up on a parallel journey with a psychologist or a healer of some sort? Because then a critical sort of life lesson that's super challenging or super intense emotionally requires some additional resources. Certainly, I find like when I went to the Benson Henry Institute at Harvard to learn how to train people to meditate, they had a caution that certain people were going to have very difficult things arise as they entered a place of peace and safety within themselves.
Yes.
So the Harvard program just had people that had already completed the program come back as mentors for free to retake the class and to be present for that 3% of people that would break down crying and sobbing session 4 because they would remember something or essentially trauma would resurface. And so Harvard sort of anticipated that and said, again, it's an opportunity as long as you can hang in there with it, recognize the opportunity and grow through it. I guess it raises the question, people need to be prepared for the possibility, I suppose, that as they get into what Heidi Hanna calls being wired for safety, get into a place of peace and try to understand these principles, they may have some things come up to the surface of their consciousness that are really important.
Yes, that happens. Trauma is a real phenomenon. The body is a repository of memory. We are this whole biological being is all about memory. Your DNA is about memory. Your brain is about memory. We're here because genetics remembers from generation to generation. This is how I create a human being. Memory conceivably can be stored in just about any tissue in the body. The immune system remembers, the gut remembers, the digestive system remembers, and we remember stressors and we remember undigested experience. You can think of trauma as experience that we've had that we couldn't fully metabolize. I couldn't fully take that experience and go, okay, I'm cool with it. I'm done. I
Couldn't
move.
shake it off.
Yeah. No, I didn't know how to deal with that experience. And now that experience will live in my body. And what often happens is undigested life experience, i.e., what so many people call trauma, will often live in the body as unwanted symptom. And that unwanted symptom can look like anything depending on what it looks like for you, for me, for anyone else. So for some people, their emotional eating is literally, it's an unwanted symptom that's really about an undigested experience, a trauma from a long time ago. Binge eating, the same thing. Weight can be the same thing. So yeah, sometimes trauma work is where a human being needs to go.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say this, I'm going to say a majority of the humans that I've seen over the years, just doing this for really 4 decades now,
Mm-hmm.
even with people who have past traumas, you can still help them advance without classic trauma work.
Mm-hmm.
Some
Mm-hmm.
people need to do some very intense trauma work and really go back into the past and go
Mm-hmm.
back into the experience. Others, it's not really the ticket.
Yeah.
Healing happens for them in the present moment. So
Mm-hmm.
even though the trauma called, you're too fat, that you were told when you were 11 years old, made you all of a sudden unsteady, unsafe, hate your body, not feel comfortable around the adult world, that trauma caused you to binge eat and emotional eat and constantly gain weight and have a challenging relationship with food. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about the past,
Mm-hmm.
but oftentimes for those people, you can really help them just by focusing in the present on helping the body enter relaxation response
Mm-hmm.
in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
So different for different people. That's
That's that's so important. I want to add to and underscore it because for our listeners, I just want them to know that's what I see in my practice. So at the 25-year mark in medicine and the 15 or 16-year mark in functional medicine, I find that there's a subset that needs some specific additional parallel part of their journey with an expert. They find by temperament or necessity, there's this need to bring whatever uh, aspects of their past, like sort of yank them into the light and wrestle with them. But my experience is that's a statistical minority, which was not intuitive to me. And thankfully, I believe again, because the body knows the way, as we start to learn practices to tell ourselves that we're safe or create safety and feel better, only a certain number of variables need to tip in most people's favor and they just get moving again, which is such great news.
Yes, absolutely. It's really the understanding that to me you're communicating is that there's a beautiful wisdom to the body.
Mm-hmm.
And when we start to access that, and the body can heal.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that healing is far more powerful and dramatic than we may have imagined.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's just taking that, it's like acupuncture. You take a tiny needle and you put it in this tiny spot on the body, and you can catalyze a fantastic change
Mm-hmm.
in a human being's nervous system or in their kidneys or in their heart or in their lungs or their liver. The same thing with a well-placed comment, a well-placed understanding, a well-placed tool or technique or strategy or practice. It's like putting that little acupuncture needle in right to that right place,
Mm-hmm.
and the system starts to regulate itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such good news. There may be no better or no more important news that comes out of our discussion than that the default setting for the body is vitality
Mhm.
and peace. And I worry in particular that for reasons that Dr. Jeffrey Bland and others have looked at over the last 50 to 100 years, conventional medicine has developed a disease focus with this unfortunate accompaniment of the presumption that the body defaults to disease.
Mhm.
And so a sort of larger aspect of what you're describing to me is that people like Terry Walls and Dale Bredesen, who are helping people with multiple sclerosis and early dementia reverse those conditions, what they're really leveraging is this premise that, again, the body only needs a certain number of variables to tip back the right way and it resets to vitality.
Mhm. I'm smiling because one of the things I noticed at some point in my career as a nutrition and eating psychology professional. And I'm one of these people who's been obsessed about nutrition from a very young age. I just want to learn everything. And, at some point in the nutrition universe, if you keep studying and you keep studying, you learn a lot. And yeah, there's always more to learn, but you can basically grasp, a significant piece of the nutritional puzzle. And just what I started noticing was that so many different kinds of nutritional approaches work, in large part not because of their specificity about what you should eat, but more about there's commonalities in these different approaches and what you should not eat or what you should start to limit or avoid. So in so many of the different nutritional systems, by and large, you're letting go of poor quality food. You're letting go of junk food. You're letting go of, so many of the offending or the allergic foods. And whether that ends up having you a vegan or following a paleo diet or following a raw food diet, whatever it is, you've eliminated a lot of substances from the diet that all of a sudden allow your body to make a shift. So all I'm trying to say is oftentimes good nutrition is simpler than we think. And, you were talking about, how the default, mechanism of the body is, its wholeness, its vitality. And I think also one of our default, I want to say core beliefs is that I can trust my body. And I can trust my relationship with my body. Meaning, hey, we're all going to die someday. So let's get on the same page as that. And at some point, if you live long enough, you're going to age and things are going to be breaking down. But in between that time, you can trust your body. I mean, for goodness sakes, there are millions of chemical reactions going on in the human body in the span of any 30 seconds. I'm not orchestrating them. I'm not making my heart beat. I'm not making my adrenal glands function. I don't do that. I'm just here being me. And there's a place where I find where it seems like we're taught to not trust the body, even when it's going through its aches and pains, even when it's going through its diseases. There's still a place where I can not only trust my body, but trust in my life that, something, I'm going to go and find good resources. I'm going to go find a good practitioner. I'm going to get a second, a third, a fourth opinion. And I'm going to trust in my body's ability to heal.
It's just so important. And
I think it is.
And it's so liberating for people as they then shift out of that fatalism and worry that they're stuck and they get moving.
And it's not only a spiritual shift, it's not only a personal emotional shift, it's a metabolic shift. Because if I'm going from fear, oh my God, I have this symptom, I have this disease, I have this unwanted habit I can't get rid of, and that's my frame, I'm in sympathetic nervous system dominance all the time. I'm in a constant stress state. What is trust? Trust is just a deep relaxation state.
I see it in, I see it in my patients when they're turning the corner, their shoulders sit lower and their face is more relaxed and there are fewer stress creases in their forehead and their eyes are brighter and they're just more at ease. Sorry to interrupt.
No, and we often look at that as something on the side, as something that's nice, maybe. And I think it's key to our healing journey. Really, what else really truly supports health from the bottom up? If I'm going to get back to that default state called vitality, in a vital system, I believe for a human being, we have a certain trust in life. That trust might get tested. That's fine. Okay, so it's going to get tested. And you might go through a period where it's hard. And then you really have to strengthen your trust muscle during that time. You have to strengthen your faith muscle. Maybe you have to go through your dark night.
Mm-hmm.
But that builds us, that strengthens us, and that strengthens my chemistry. How could it not?
It's a growth opportunity to transform.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to convey as we wrap up, because you've been so generous with your time, to me, a consequence of what you're saying. And again, something I see in my practice, something I kind of want to close with, and have you close with any key concepts we might not have addressed fully. Because fear is a motivator for like survival reasons. A fair number of the people, the first day I meet them, they've heard from one expert not to have gluten. They've heard from another expert not to have sugar. They've heard from another expert not to have dairy. They've heard from another expert not to have legumes and meat. And so their first day with me, their perfectionism is manifesting as, if I eat solely dirt and bark and live like a monk, I will be adequately restricted based on the summary of all food experts. and so my first conversation with them is, maybe you're going to end up with an arthritis that's sensitive to nightshades, or maybe you are going to want to be gluten-free for your brain health. We'll see. But let's first broaden the focus back out, develop this sense of, food is there for me. It's a blessing. This is blessing management. I'm going to form these friendships. And then if a few of these don't turn out to be my best friends over time, maybe we're going to restrict them. But let's first broaden out. And I saw this in one of your videos. This is important, right? That people don't become overly restricted.
Yes. I'm glad you brought this up, Rob. I think that in this day and age, we are suffering from what I call a high fact diet. People have so much information in their heads,
Mm-hmm.
and we become nutrition refugees. People are literally, they've been bombarded with so much conflicting information
Mm-hmm.
that they're shell shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And what I will tell students, clients is this, that there are as many accurate and useful nutritional systems as there are people on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what you've heard, you need to learn how to empower yourself as a nutritional explorer and as the general manager of your own body. So, in other words, every nutritional injunction, rule, fact that you've ever heard of, chances are there's a nugget of wisdom in there, maybe for you or for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So, whatever you've heard, we're going to take the nuggets of wisdom, we're going to try to find those that work for you and your body.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that, yes, welcome to this day and age when PhDs are, shooting at each other, and everybody wants to be like the number one expert, and my system is right. No, mine is right. And these are the times we live in. So there is no widespread agreement on what the perfect diet is, perhaps because there really isn't one.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's some general rules that work for a heck of a lot of us, for sure. So it's learning how to empower ourselves around nutrition information as opposed to the opposite, which is disempowered. And that's a quick turnaround for a lot of people. I find once I explain to them, it's just really like an intellectual intervention. There is no perfect diet.
Mm-hmm.
And anything you've ever heard of works for certain people at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
There might be a time in your life where meat eating is the best thing, and a time in your life where being a vegan is the best thing. That doesn't make either one right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so it takes a more flexible mind to notice that just there's a lot of paradox in nutrition. There's a lot of potential. There's a lot of possibilities. And it's not just what's the best system.
Mm. What a great conversation with you today. Are there any key things you want people to know that we didn't discuss today?
Oh, I think we've covered so many good things. really at the very least to come away with, no matter what challenge you feel like you're facing with food and body, it's truly here for our personal growth. It's
Hmm.
here to help us be the best person we came here to be. Doesn't feel like that.
Hmm.
But our eating challenge, our food related challenge, whatever the health challenge is, yes, it's a health challenge. Yes, it's a food and body challenge, but there's something more in it. And that if we can look at what is this trying to teach me as a person? How is this trying to help me grow as a person, grow emotionally, grow spiritually? It makes the actual physical healing, I find, that much more available to us.
Great. Great. Well, thank you for what you do, and thank you for sharing your wisdom today.
Dr. Rob, I so appreciate it. It's such a great conversation. I look forward to more.
Seaworthy exists for people to overcome their health challenges and be fully vital. Please consider subscribing, giving us a 5-star review if we've earned it, and going to our website podcast tab for any questions or comments you'd like to share with us. Thanks.